Happy New Year and welcome to the Poetry Box Live. I'm Shawn Aveningo Sanders, and we're thrilled that you could join us to kick off another great year of poetry. For those who are joining us for the first time, my husband Robert and I run an independent press here in Portland, Oregon, known as the Poetry Box. We work with writers from all over the country, and we've enjoyed collaborating with over 120 talented poets to publish their book so far. It's always been our goal for this show to help our authors reach a broader audience. And boy, do we have a vast audience today, with poetry fans joining us from Vietnam, Sweden, Mexico, Canada, Australia, and all across the United States. It's snowing here in Oregon, and I can't think of a better way to spend a blustery winter day than sharing in the love of poetry with all of you. We've got a fantastic show for you today, featuring three amazing poets. We have Stephen Croft, who will be joining us from the Barrier Islands of Georgia. Penelope Scambly Schott will be joining us from Duper, Oregon. And Wendy Erd is joining us from way up in Homer, Alaska. Let's get started with our first featured poet. Stephen Croft is the author of At Home with a Dreamlike Earth, a collection of poems that brings us to lush coastal landscapes and the nurturing comforts of Southern living. Stephen lives on a barrier island off the coast of Georgia on a property lush with vegetation. He is the author of three previous chapbooks, Coastal Scenes, Moment in Time, and New World Poems. A pushcart and Best at the Net nominee, his poems have appeared in Willowa Journal, Chestnut Review, North of Oxford, Anti-Heroin Chic, The New Verse News, Soul Lit, and many other places. Please welcome Stephen Croft.
Thank you, Shawn. As my title indicates, I'm a nature lover, and I just really appreciate the cover that Shawn created for this book. It's so beautiful. In trying to decide how I would read the poems, I've decided to move from driving poems to walking poems to finally a stationary poem. I think that the slower you move, in my opinion, the better you can appreciate nature. So even when I'm driving, I try to view nature, and in fact, you'll see I tend to slow down and stop even when driving. The first poem is called Georgia Back Road. Browned grass of ditch, happy in the sun's scorching heat, surprise of cotton in the sudden field, silence from dust-smoked windows of a forgotten factory, river's clean smell of night in the dying twilight, slouch-hatted generals, immobile watch over town square, sweat of summer, taste of mulberries, Elvis on the radio, drumming the ear. And this is Alapahaw, which, by the way, is the name of a town in Georgia. It's an Indian name. It's probably the same in Oregon. There's lots of Indian names for rivers in Georgia and towns. Alapahaw. When I take Highway 280 across South Georgia to Birmingham, choosing its sometimes lonely asphalt, splitting forests of pine or farms, flush with crops, over the monotony of interstate and Atlanta's spaghetti interchanges, I make time to leave this slower road, buttoned by small towns of main streets, motels, Dairy Queens, turn further south, find the even slower roads in the county of my grandfather's one-room schoolhouse, where he sat for 11 years and daydreamed of the river and pine woods, of quiet deer and turkey calls, sometimes a bear. Find the place he liked to go behind the country church on the even now dirt road, down the river bluff in the place he was born into. I park at the church where he pulled his pistol on two angry dogs, fired it into a tree, only wanting to scare them, he explained. Would only kill them if he had to. This lesson in spirits, trees, animals, people, ancestors, best taught, felt, believed here where hives of mosquitoes float through twilight, where I walk the broken clay road down to the river, where I wait for night to shimmer moonlight on forever tea-dark waters, mysterious waters, hedged by bald cypresses, wait for whippoorwill's song, and my grandfather's memory spirit walks across where we would put the boat in with its quiet electric motor, his memory resting here in the waking night, heavy in my chest. This is en route to an appointment in Savannah. I leave the interstate where Georgia is impossible to see, take Highway 17 through towns and hamlets under canopies of beautiful live oaks, its heyday of 50s car culture, a time warp of abandoned or still used buildings. The Betcher's Bar and Grill in an old Stuckey's, or a motel's office with green house plants hanging from ornamental aluminum porch columns, white pickup out front, the horseshoe of guest rooms stretching from its empty checkerboard of old tarps on the decaying roof. After miles of pine flatwoods, the bottomlands of South Newport River are bayous of green algae ponds under pines and oaks. And I'm drawn to turn off at the boat ramp road where scrub oak, pine, and cedar border the marsh, down the potholed asphalt, past styrofoam meal boxes and cardboard 12-pack cases, to the boat ramp's concrete descent into tea-dark water, where I turn the car off, listen to the buzz of cicadas, wonder how long it took a purple flowered vine I see to creep through the high tasseled grass at water's edge. Imagine the benthic world of trout and sea bass under the dark water. Listen to the sweet warbles of songbirds. Then the motorized zip of a jet ski sounds around the bend of the river's oxbow, reminds me I have an appointment in a city's traffic down the road. And this is still life on the St. Simon's Causeway. Eastbound traffic stopped by an accident. Window down, stalled between mainland and island on a winter evening, line of cars tethered by the sounds of our rumbling motors. A brown marsh rabbit noses in the roadside grass, cut away monthly by orange riding mowers from the tufted expanse of Spartina. White egret perched on a nearby hammock of cedars, quiet inquisitor of water, mud minnows, and tadpoles. Narrow throat speechless, shoulders tensed with stillness. Up ahead, hidden by the rising arch of a channel bridge, EMTs pull the injured from a three-car pileup, life still or trembling in their hands. 2 cars back, rap music pounds from the frame of a powder blue Chevy as, in my rear view, sun gives a blood-kissed goodbye to sky and tidal marsh. And so now I'm walking in the next poem, and I write quite a few poems about my yard. I'm very lucky to live on several acres of purposefully overgrown vegetation. that I leave that way because it's very soothing to walk through it. This is beautyberry season. As Wendell Berry says, in a place that is my own place, I walk a foot-tamped path through my yard's hammock of forest in a suburban island neighborhood. I walk to mark the ground's gradual disappearing of glass lizards and darting skinks, the fading of the grapevine's curtain of green leaves down to its tangled skeleton in the slow autumn days. In the leafy ceiling, crooked oaken branches drape skeins of moss, watched over by 100-foot pines, high green needles bright in the sun, melodies of songbirds, squawking of squirrels, sharper squawks of jays. A squirrel sits a lower branch intently turning a nut, snapping its tail's pom-pom to let me know I am watching him. I see two of my cats move panther-like to a red bird under an azalea. I toss a pine cone, scare the bird higher. Then, my respite disturbed, a flock of fish crows comes from the sky all at once. Nature's punk rockers, loud, raucous, all about attitude. One lands on my stand of beautyberry bushes, dips and sways with a branch, until 7 or 8 land, snap the branch. Their outrageous calls, the collective vibration of 100 wings, jolt the day's peaceful status quo. They're all about bottom-up politics. We are here, get the F out of our faces. Even a possum, with its laid-back, hippie-like gait, speeds up away from the noise. Later, they dash my white truck with royal colors, left behind graffiti. Other birds, animals, bushes, human, a yard full of straits, we're all glad they've gone. This is Beach Walk. Leave the car at the old Coast Guard station parking lot. Leave traffic noises, the low bustle of tourists through Pier Village shops. For the dirt path between cedars, clear shrieks of gulls herald this partition. Sun on white sand heats humid air. A pelican floats. 2 teenage girls walk a slow drag of bare feet, searching for their lives in their phones. Like I walk down to the waterline, look down for mother of pearl insides of quahogs, porcelain polish of moon snail shells and cowries. I look up to watch the run and pause of foraging terns from moving aprons of water in the swash. As windblown clouds chiaroscuro sunlight waving over water like a magician's handkerchief. I breathe deep salt air, palm tiny shell treasures. And this is my final poem, and finally, I'm stationary in my appreciation, which I think is the best way to appreciate nature. This is lines written under the arms of a live oak. When the world spins in chaos, I can sit on a garden bench I built from 2x4s and backed into a line of overgrown azaleas by the grave of a favorite cat, Piglet's bench, and stare at the hard limbs of an oak rising implacable like the sun. And I'm without problems significant under its centuries. If I could talk to the tree, it would listen like it listens to the red-bellied woodpecker's call to the wind rustling the long ovals of its leaves. And if it spoke in its stillness, the decibels stretched so far they're unheard, I decide it does speak this way, speak its message of morning calm, while it listens like I listen to the call of a red-bellied woodpecker, to the wind rustling the long ovals of its leaves. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. You know, this book really brought me back to a time in my life about 30 plus years ago when I lived in the South. And I lived in Alabama, and then I lived in Atlanta for a few years. And like you, I really like to avoid those spaghetti highways of the city. And I would often, when I had a chance, drive the back roads on my way to work, those roads that would skirt the Chattahoochee. And I just loved just kind of communing with nature whenever I could, living in the South. So thank you for bringing that memory back to me. And I never made it over to the Barrier Islands, but I want to thank you for taking me and for taking all of us there today. It was a real treat. Next up, we have Penelope Scambly Schott, author of God, a respectfully divergent testament, which is a delightful collection full of conversational poems that explore the concept of God. Penelope lives in a small town of Dufur, Oregon. Small is in a population of only 635. She has published several books of poems and is a past recipient of the Oregon Book Award for Poetry. She was raised to believe that every religion is a folk custom and that each one should be respected. Her own faith practice is climbing Dufur Hill, where from the top on clear days, she can see 5 mountains. Penelope and the dog do this daily, and on Sundays, her husband joins them on the trek. Please welcome Penelope Scambly Schott.
Hi, start over again. Okay, I'm thrilled to see the people I know and the people I don't know welcome. And I don't know if this is a book that should have a trigger warning. I do know that the blurbs are both by one a woman and one a man who are both ministers of the Lord. So can't be that terrible. And God is spelled small g, capital O-D. Self-description of God. I am taller than Everest and fit into a walnut shell. My long hair glows fire red, fire yellow, fire black. My eyes are burnt cinders and beyond counting. When I stare at you, a warmth licks at your skin. Sometimes you mistake the sensation for love. If on certain days you feel taller, I am lifting you up and up into the temporary ecstasy of a clarity in which you know exactly why you were born and you won't mind dying. This is magnificence. Next. And yes, I really am God. It's okay. Capitalize my name if you like. All nouns are capitalized in German. Maybe the Germans honor thingness. I too honor that thing called thingness because I created every existing thing and rightfully honor my own fine work. If you saw me, you might say, goddess. Please don't. The S is a diminutive, and I, your God, refuse to be diminished. My ability. This God business, more complicated than you can imagine. First trick, gender. I know, you're used to that male deity. So I ditched the penis. It was a nuisance, dangling there where it could get hurt. A god should carry all power internally. I do, not semen or menstrual blood. No, more like electrical charge, the capability to leap across broad distances, to spark. Pros and cons of creating the world. Pros. Yes, the usual ones. Double rainbows, the green throats of Anna's hummingbirds, blue-footed boobies, all such fun to invent. The special blue of a glacier. Sky every day. No limits there. There is no color sky can't be. Or all the lovely words in all the languages. Cons. I haven't yet created adequate words for hurt, pain, grief, loss, despair, desolation, each bigger and deeper than words, beyond God. Repairing the earth. This is a do-it-yourself project. Don't ask God. You messed it up, you fix it. I can't bring back the passenger pigeons. Monarch butterflies, they're up to you. I gave you milkweed. Plant it. Don't shit in the river. I mean all your shit. Fertilizers, poisons, plastic crud. You can stop or not. I'm not in charge of what y'all decide to throw out, to burn, to waste. Getting too hot, honey? Tough titty. Where else you gonna go? Am I bragging? Am I bragging to claim that this is the best planet? I should know, made them all. Years of planning? No. Years didn't exist before I dreamed them up. Time as measurement? Nothing to measure. Then no years. To be God means to imagine. No matter how tiny I can get, my mind remains ginormous. I have imagined rain and drought, seasons, day and night. I have imagined you, a being who hears black marks on a page. This one is called, "Oh my," exclaims God, "this salamander just gave birth to 40 babies," followed by 16 exclamation points. I am quite the gardener. I plant seeds and babies. Those of you mothers with huge litters, let's cry over the ones who don't make it. The tiny turtles who never reached the ocean. They got born too. Consider the unlikelihood of living at all. Chance. You might have been a Norway rat, a mold spore. And what would be wrong with that? I'm sculpting, painting, crafting all the time. I like to experiment and be surprised. I mean, see how you turned out? My godly adornment. I wear ladybugs on my toes. They sit like polish with tiny dots. House wrens perch on my fingers. The lion's generous mane tucks about my neck. I wind olive green anacondas over my many wrists. An anaconda can be 30 feet long. I measured when I made them. When I lift my hands in prayer, and yes, friends, even I have to pray, if only to myself. Snake tails dangle into the jungle, thicker than vines. They shine like streamers in a school gymnasium. Frequently asked questions. Number 1. There are 3 poems called Frequently Asked Questions. I won't make you listen to them all. Of course you have questions. Any thinking person does. I don't give press conferences or conduct town meetings, but go ahead and ask. I check my prayer mail faithfully. Here's a common one. Does the devil exist? Yes and no. He's a tornado, a black cloud swirling around, destroying what he lands on, or a landslide, trying to crush a truck. Or he's that same truck full of punks with guns, each one ready to prove he's tough, when really what they want is for their mothers to appear and softly stroke their hair. When one door closes, God opens another. This goes on all day. Eventually, your house fills up with flies. Whether or not. Here, I need to interrupt myself. Huge snowflakes twirl onto piled snow. Top rails of the white fences run felted with fresh white, and each post exults. That's actually what's happening. A tabby cat under the hedge is highly displeased. Finches have abandoned the feeder. White hills and white sky with no line between them. Today is called winter. If you are a photographer, notice the black and white. Wait for some kid in a purple hat to cross the road. Enjoy it. I'm working on spring. Sometimes I can't turn the pages right. Wait a minute here. Okay. So God starts out explaining herself, but there are problems. This is called crisis of faith. Sometimes I don't believe in myself. Maybe the world happened by chance. Or maybe it doesn't really exist. Try biting on your own finger just to prove you were here. Did you feel that? I felt it. You're here. But am I here? What if the whole notion of God is a bullshit cover-up for total lack of meaning? Help me through this one. Tell me, caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. Tell me, valleys and mountains, a fine red wine, knock-knock jokes, especially those. Knock, knock, who's there? God. So God's crisis continues. When God gets tired, all my throats are sore. All my eyes sting with seeing. Those anacondas on my wrists are weighing me down. I've been at work since the start and before. Creation was heavy labor. This all used to be much more fun. I have consulted repeatedly with myself, and there is nothing new under the sun. Even those kittens aren't as cute as they used to be. The sun might set for the last time. And I won't tell you how the crisis resolves itself, but the book hasn't been published yet, and you can get it now at the pre-publication price. So if you're interested, that's what you should do. And other than that, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. I hope I didn't offend anybody. And I love you. Bye.
Oh, we love you too, Penelope. I love this little book so much. I love the opening line to the book. I am taller than Everest and fit into a walnut shell. I just think that's just the most wonderful puzzle to invite us into this collection, filled with so many delights and wisdom and love and that delicious sense of humor of yours. I mean, you gotta love a God that says, tough titty, figure it out. You messed it up, you fix it. So thank you for writing this just delightful book. It's just wonderful. And thanks for sharing the poems with us today.
Well, thank you for publishing it.
Now I'd like to introduce our final poet for tonight's show. Wendy Erd is the author of It's a Crooked Road, but Not Far to the House of Flowers, a collection that layers details of the human and natural world with a heart-tugging awareness of the ephemeral nature of all things. For 20 years, Wendy traveled between Alaska and Asia, supporting indigenous and seldom heard communities to voice their stories through exhibit and film. Her writing appears as prose on road signs in Alaska's Copper River watershed and as poems along an estuary trail in Homer, Alaska. She has received several statewide literary awards, and her work has been published widely. Wendy also envisioned and coordinated Poems in Place, a project that places poetry written by Alaskan poets on signs across Alaska's state parks. So please welcome Wendy Erd.
Thank you, Shawn. And thank you, Shawn and Robert, both so much for putting these poems I've been writing for such a long time into this beautiful book. And thanks to my sister Diana, who made this beautiful collage that graces this book, and Robert made an artful rendition of it for our cover. Also, Stephen and Penelope, it's just really fun to listen to your poems. Great. I'm so happy that you are here. And I also want to thank, I have like friends and family from all over the place. I can see you. So it's just so touching to me to be able to read to an international audience of people that I love and know. And yeah, and I just celebrate this really rich life that I've been living. So anyway, I'm going to start with a poem that, as you can probably see in the background, I'm in Alaska where I live. And this poem is called The Window. A small box of darkness opens into a dark without edges. Great horned owl's 5-note call freezes a rabbit white on whiter snow. Up rises the predatory moon. Shadows blue the meadow. Her mate hoots low from the east and far below. Sound has its own geography, the heart a wide belonging. We are not alone. Woman in her window, rabbits become snow, owls longing song. Winter, a blue-black cape of stars, Pleiades, Taurus, Orion, slowly turning towards dawn. This next poem is called At Night Above Our Sleep, and it's for my husband, Peter. For Peter. I meet you in the air, barefoot and supple, carrying a basket of memories and leaves, the one you gave when you fell for me, the one you took back. A forest of leaves, green clocks that turn the wind. Now autumn, the stacked spruce of days waits to be split, become fire. The hush of spring, paintbox and promise under snow. After seasons waking beside you, our old eyes soften to blur beautiful, the familiar of so many years. This next poem is called Laundry of Hours. Waking alone, I held you as one must, bookmark a dream or suspend an edge of air above the hem of rising water, folding the hours against your absence. Walking aimlessly, I roamed a city when an apple tree, bright with bloom and heady with blossom, swept me into its arms. Below that lacework of sky and flower, the heart's door slid open. It wasn't that I missed you less. It was that there was less of me and more of the world in its place. So now we're going to travel a bit. Peter and I lived and worked in Southeast Asia for over 20 years. Well, I guess about 20 years. And there's some people here from Vietnam, so really fun to read to you about this place. And I want to give a little context to this next poem. Sometimes I worked as a writer when I lived in Vietnam. And this particular poem comes from a time when I was writing an article for Ford Foundation magazine. They were funding a really amazing project, I thought, with Medicine du Monde, like Doctors Without Borders, medicine of the world. And what their project was is that in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City, that they would go out at night, after midnight, in these small groups on motorcycles, and they would treat to rough places in Saigon where there was sex workers and drug addicts and people really down and out and outside on the streets. And they would travel with a doctor who would treat them, and they would also give them like a coupon, good for a hot meal and a place to go get some treatment. So anyway, I also went out on a motorcycle behind my translator, whose name is Phương. And this poem was born at that time. Also, I want to tell you that there's a name in here. It says, Mai calls me Co Tien. And Co Tien in Vietnamese means the fairy. And many people sort of spontaneously call me Co Tien, which maybe because I have white hair. Anyway, this is called Saigon If Only, for Phương Mai. Mai calls me Co Tien, the fairy who offers dreams. Were that I could grant such simple desires, the moon-faced prostitute would find the kind-eyed man. Loneliness would roar off on a late model motorbike and never look back. The addicted son would return and cover his mother asleep on the sidewalk outside Cholon Market. Di and Sanya, Go and her baby far from home, would travel the river home to Cambodia, to rice field, mango tree, water jar, lamplight, home, husband. The black canal would shake loose its garbage cloak, where only lotus blossoms. The old couple, curled in their sampan, would smell salt air and sleep. Children of the street would remember they were children. Full, the moon would understand. Satisfied, the dark night would bestow silver. So now we're going to move to Yunnan, China, where I also lived and worked off and on for about 3 years. And, I learned to speak basic, I could get by in Vietnamese, but during that time, I spent some time in Yunnan, China, and I just couldn't take on learning Chinese. So I never learned to speak Chinese, just a handful. And so this poem, there's many stories, but I hope this poem will tell the story of living in Kunming, China. It's called Salt Looks Like Sugar. There's no English at the grocery in Kunming. Salt looks like sugar. Girl without tongue, I thread through this city of millions. The air smells of coal. The wind seeks all corners. All rivers rush to borders. All borders meet, except mine, which I left at home in a suitcase under the bed. Next door cats prowl the upcurved roof of the last old house in the alley. Down the street, the old woman with bound feet sits on a bench in late sun. I long to hear her story, her face a folded map, a dried plum. I don't know how to know my neighbors. In cafes, I sit alone at tables. From shop windows, my reflection peers, white-haired and lanky. I am a nun of circumstance. Isolate, yet strangely happy. Each morning I jog through Green Lake Park, where near dawn, women carve the sky with swords, Mao-capped men play cards, their caged birds sing. Harmony rises early in this blue sky city of eternal spring. One night, a man let me peer through his telescope. I swear the moon looked Chinese. What did I ever really know of Kunming? Only the heartfelt pull of an air whose string. All I knew was what I felt, elusive as sugar dissolved in tea. Memory folded like an origami rose, paper thin and sweet. Mosaic has a little epigraph below the title. A mosaic is a conversation with time. Terry Tempest Williams. Mosaic. Maybe all farewells go like this. After 20 years, I'm leaving Vietnam, but pretend otherwise. Say, we'll meet again, just as the door clicks closed. The streets are waking, sweep of twig broom, cocks crow, Bangkuan broth rising. From his basket, a young man sells me a hand of ripe bananas for the last time. On the small bridge, temple flags fly for the Black Buddha in Chukbox Temple. These will continue on if I were to stay, if I left. Today, I will step out of this life as thoroughly as the north wind that last night lifted loose leaves to mosaic the street below with color, leaving space behind for the morning light. And my last poem is actually the last poem in the book, and it's in a group of poems that were written, as Shawn said, I have some poems that appear along an estuary, and it was this wonderful writer's residency, artist residency that I had here in my own town to write poems about the estuary. And I spent a month soaking it in, and it became my co-author. I think it authored as many of these poems as I did. So this is my last poem. It's called Listening for the Rain. Every day is like this, the short and long of forgetting. A man with a walking stick, a limp, his daughter in a red sweatshirt crossing the berm. 10 years from now, will they remember that the beach they walked smelled of rain, that drops made small ticks on his ball cap, feathers on cheeks, set diamonds in her hair. If we could remember not only the rain, but the weight of the damp jacket, not only the jacket, but the ease our bodies have moving through time beside another without the word why. On a cold, salt-wet afternoon, the vapor of our breath rising ahead of us, trailing behind. Thank you.
Oh, Wendy, you know, I have to just compliment you on this entire book. And it just, every time I would read through these poems, they just made me feel good. And it's really been a special treat to hear them in your voice because they're just soothing as a lullaby to hear you read them. They're just gorgeous. And of course, you know, one of my favorite poems in the collection is the last one you read, Listening in the Rain. And I wanted to share with you that a few days ago, I received a video of my granddaughter living in San Diego and experiencing little raindrops for the very first time. And I just immediately went to that line, feathers on cheeks, set diamonds in her hair, because it just, that was her. She was just like, ah. So your poem just really, really resonated when I got to experience that moment. So thank you so much for taking time to share these poems with us today. I really enjoyed it. And I know everybody else did too. Let's have a giant round of applause for all of our readers today. Wow, I'd like to thank our three talented poets, Stephen, Penelope, and Wendy. And I want to thank you, our audience, for supporting our authors and joining us for another edition of the Poetry Box Live. We'll be back next month on February 10th with 3 winners from our 2023 chapbook contest, Richard Jordan, Kirsten Morgan, and Carol Barrett. I'd like to remind all the poets out there listening that we're going to be starting our 7th annual chapbook contest on February 1st. So you can go to our website and find all the details if you look under the contest and awards tab. That's at thepoetrybox.com. And also you can sign up for our newsletter at the bottom of every page on our website. So if you want to keep up to date on upcoming shows, new releases, and publishing opportunities, please be sure and sign up. So thanks again for joining us today. We'll see you next month on the Poetry Box Live.